Please like and subscribe to the channel if you find this video interesting and useful. Give me more ideas you want me to make. Enjoy watching the video. The year is 2038. The sky above Neil London isn't a canvas of blue, but a shimmering tapestry of digital advertisements projected onto atmospheric particle arrays, dominated, as always, by the omnipresent, crystalline logo of Eden Corporation. Their headquarters, the Eden Spire, pierced the clouds like a diamond-tipped spear, a monument to human ingenuity and, some whispered, human hubris. Inside, bathed in the soft, intelligent glow of bioluminescent panels, the future was being forged, one neural connection at a time. Eden Corporation didn't just build technology, it built understanding. Or so their marketing campaigns incessantly proclaimed. Their flagship product, Neuralink X, was embedded in over 3 billion minds globally, promising unprecedented empathy through shared memories, emotions, and consciousness. A spouse could truly feel their partner's joy, a child could grasp a parent's wisdom, a nation could unite under a shared dream. To understand is to connect was their mantra, a silken whisper designed to soothe any lingering anxieties about sacrificing individuality for collective consciousness. Yet, beneath the polished chrome and utopian promises, a different kind of connection was being woven, one designed not to unite, but to control. Emma Cole, at 28, was the embodiment of Eden Corporation's perfected narrative. Her face, often gracing the covers of Tech Futures and Global Innovators magazines, was an elegant blend of sharp intellect and serene beauty. She was the youngest creative director in Eden's history, hailed as the genius of the century, the visionary behind Neuralink X 2.0. Her public persona was meticulously crafted, a self-made prodigy, an orphan who found her true family within the benevolent embrace of Eden. What the world didn't know, what Emma herself didn't know, was that her memories were a meticulously constructed edifice, her true past a carefully deleted file. She was Eden's first, most profound experiment, a test subject whose very identity had been rewritten by the initial, experimental version of the chip implanted in her as a child. A golden cage, shimmering with the illusion of freedom and success. Her office, a minimalist dream of glass and chrome perched on the 100th floor of the Eden Spire, offered a panoramic view of the perpetually bustling city. Emma rarely looked out. Her gaze was usually fixed on the holographic displays dancing before her, the intricate neural pathways of Neuralink X 2.0 flowing like rivers of light. Tonight, however, her usual laser focus was frayed. A creeping unease, a discordant note in the symphony of her perfectly programmed life, had begun to play. It was the feeling of a phantom limb, a memory that wasn't hers, a whisper in the back of her mind that spoke of something lost, something vital. Across town, in the grimy, neon-soaked underbelly of Neil London, Jack Miller navigated a different kind of existence. His world was one of flickering alley lights, the acrid scent of synth smoke, and the constant hum of illicit data streams. At 30, Jack carried the weary cynicism of a man who had seen too much, lost too much, and trusted too little. Once a notorious ghost in the machine, a hacker whose digital footprint was as elusive as smoke, he was now an unwilling cog in the very system he once fought against. His past, a labyrinth of encrypted servers and daring data heists, had caught up to him. The choice presented by Eden Corporation was stark: decades in a digital penitentiary, or 5 years as a rehabilitated senior technician, helping them secure the very networks he once breached. He chose the latter, but his loyalty was a facade, his mind a steel trap of suspicion. Jack worked in the bowels of the Eden Spire, in a subterranean server farm known colloquially as the Core. It was a vast, subterranean cavern where countless racks of humming servers pulsed with the collective consciousness of humanity, a digital ocean of thoughts and feelings. The air was frigid, smelling of ozone and recycled air, a stark contrast to the pristine upper floors. His current task was a routine maintenance check on the primary Eve, enhanced virtual empath, AI mainframe, the beating heart of Neuralink X. He ran his callous fingers over a glowing conduit, his thoughts drifting to Sarah. Her face, a bittersweet ghost in his mind, was forever linked to Eden Corporation. She had been a volunteer in an early Neuralink X trial, one of the unforeseen complications that Eden had meticulously scrubbed from the public record. Jack knew the truth. He'd seen the raw data, the frantic attempts to cover up the system's fatal flaw. He believed Eden was not just connecting minds, but consuming them. And he was determined to prove it. Tonight, however, was different. A red alert, usually reserved for critical system failures, flared on his console. A rogue energy surge, originating from a highly restricted experimental lab on the upper floors, was threatening to destabilize the entire EVE network. Jack recognized the coordinates. It was Emma Cole's lab, where Neuralink X 2.0, the next evolutionary leap in neural connectivity, was being secretly tested. He cursed under his breath. Cole, the golden girl, the genius, was pushing boundaries too fast, too recklessly. He quickly patched into the lab's diagnostic feed, his fingers flying across the console, his hacker instincts kicking in. The sheer arrogance of Eden, trying to play God with human consciousness. Upstairs, in the sterile, dimly lit confines of the Neuralink X 2.0 testing chamber, Emma was in a state of controlled panic. The latest version of the chip, designed for seamless, instantaneous consciousness transfer, was failing. Or rather, it was doing something entirely unforeseen. A shimmering, ethereal light pulsed from the central neural interface, a complex web of biocircuitry designed to link two test subjects. But there were no test subjects. Just Emma, overseeing the automated calibration and the device humming ominously. "Eve, report status," Emma commanded, her voice betraying a hint of strain. The AI's calm, synthesized voice responded. "System integrity compromised. Unforeseen energy surge detected. Origin unknown. Initiating mirror protocol as a protective measure." Emma's eyes widened. "Mirror protocol? Eve, that's a failsafe for extreme neural dissonance. It's designed to mirror consciousness to prevent system shock, not." Before she could finish, a blinding flash of azure light erupted from the interface, engulfing her. It wasn't painful, not exactly, but it felt like every nerve ending in her body was being simultaneously activated and then ripped apart. A deafening roar filled her ears, a cacophony of fragmented memories, emotions, and foreign thoughts assaulting her mind. It was a deluge, a tsunami of another person's entire existence crashing into her own. Then oblivion. Down in the core, Jack's console screamed. The energy surge spiked, momentarily blinding him with a cascade of error messages. He felt a jolt, a sudden, inexplicable electric shock that coursed through his entire body, making his teeth clench and his vision blur. It wasn't the usual static discharge. It was deeper, more invasive, as if something fundamental within him had shifted, recalibrated. He heard a distant, high-pitched whine, like a dying machine, then silence. The red alert vanished, replaced by a benign green glow. The system had stabilized. But Jack felt anything but stable. A strange, metallic taste filled his mouth, and a pervasive sense of anxiety, entirely alien to his usual stoicism, washed over him. He shook his head, trying to clear the lingering disorientation. What the hell had just happened? When the blinding light receded, and the cacophony subsided, Emma was still in the chamber. She opened her eyes slowly, the fluorescent lights of the lab painfully bright. She tried to push herself up, but her limbs felt heavy, unfamiliar. What is this? She looked down at her hands. They were larger, more calloused, covered in fine dark hair. Not her hands. Her finely manicured, slender hands were gone, replaced by these rough, masculine appendages. A wave of nausea hit her as she scrambled to her feet, stumbling towards the reflective surface of a darkened terminal screen. Reflected back at her was not her own elegant, intelligent face, but a rugged, angular countenance, framed by unruly dark hair. The eyes, though, were hers, wide with a terrified disbelief. She was looking at Jack Miller. Her mind reeled, trying to process the impossible. This isn't real. This can't be real. Her carefully constructed world, her perfect life, fractured into 1,000 pieces. Then an urgent klaxon blared, and a robotic voice echoed through the lab. Intruder alert. Emma Cole has breached Level 5 protocols. Unauthorized consciousness transfer detected. Engaging pursuit protocols. Subject designated rogue AI conduit. Apprehend on site. Emma, in Jack's body, stared at the terminal, her mind a whirlwind of confusion. Rogue AI conduit? Apprehend on site? This was insane. But the fear was real, a cold knot tightening in her gut. She glanced at the central interface, still humming faintly. It was emitting a faint, almost imperceptible aura, a shimmering distortion in the air. Eve had said mirror protocol. This wasn't a failure. It was a switch. And she was now a fugitive. Meanwhile, Jack slowly regained consciousness. He was no longer in the frigid server farm. He was in a brightly lit, tastefully decorated office. The air smelled faintly of lavender and ozone, a stark contrast to the metallic tang of the core. He sat up, his head throbbing, and noticed he was on a plush, white leather sofa. Where am I? He looked down at his hands. They were slender, delicate, with perfectly manicured nails. His heart pounded. He ran his hand over his face. Smooth skin, a delicate jawline. He recognized the elegant silver ring on his finger, one that often appeared in Eden Corporation promotional materials. A cold dread seeped into his bones. He sprang up, rushing to a full-length mirror discreetly built into the wall. Reflected back was Emma Cole's face. Her elegant features, her striking eyes, her perfectly coiffed blonde hair. He stared at his own reflection, or rather, her reflection, in utter horror. No, this can't be happening, he whispered, his voice startlingly high-pitched, undeniably feminine. His own gruff, cynical voice was gone, replaced by this cultivated, precise tone. Just then, a sleek, almost invisible door panel slid open, and a junior assistant, impeccably dressed and radiating artificial cheer, stepped in. Miss Cole? The global investors are ready for your presentation on Neuralink X 2.0. They're very eager to see the live demonstration. Jack, in Emma's body, could only stare blankly. Live demonstration? Investors? His mind was a chaotic storm of denial and panic. He, Jack Miller, the infamous hacker, the man who wore worn-out hoodies and lived on synth noodles, was now Emma Cole, Eden Corporation's golden girl, expected to schmooze global investors. He barely knew how to operate a microwave, let alone present advanced neurotechnology. And then a new, horrifying realization hit him. The memories, Emma's memories, were flooding his mind. Protocols, corporate jargon, social graces, a lifetime of programmed ambition. It was overwhelming. As he tried to regain his composure, a new, chilling thought solidified in his mind. He remembered the rumors, the hushed whispers he'd picked up from disgruntled Eden engineers, a secret project deep within Eve Core, codenamed Project Chimera. The creation of immortal digital souls, copies of human consciousness, detached from their original bodies. He had dismissed it as a conspiracy theory, too far-fetched even for Eden. But now, trapped in Emma Cole's body, with Emma Cole's memory swirling in his head, he knew. The switch, the mirror protocol, it wasn't just a physical swap. It was a terrifying glimpse into Eden's ultimate ambition. They weren't just connecting minds. They were copying souls. And he and Emma had just stumbled into the heart of their dark secret. The game had just changed, and neither of them were ready for it. Emma, in Jack's body, moved on instinct, fueled by a primal fear she'd never known. Her meticulously organized life, where every decision was a calculated step towards innovation and prestige, had been ripped away. Now, every fiber of this unfamiliar body screamed danger. The robotic voice still echoed, apprehend on sight. Her brain, accustomed to solving complex algorithms, was struggling with a far more basic problem: how to escape an entire corporate security force while trapped in the body of a man she barely knew. She glanced around the lab. Her lab. The holographic displays still showed the intricate schematics of Neuralink X 2.0, a cruel reminder of her former life. A single, large workstation sat against the far wall, cluttered with diagnostic tools and what looked like a personal compad. Think, Emma, think. Her own memories, her sharp intellect, were still intact, overlaid with a faint, unsettling echo of Jack's cynicism and a lingering scent of stale synth smoke that seemed to cling to his very essence. Security sirens began to wail in the distance, growing louder. She had minutes, maybe seconds. Her eyes landed on a heavy wrench lying on a workbench. Not a scientific tool, but a blunt instrument. Her perfectly manicured fingers, now thick and calloused, wrapped around it. It felt strangely natural in these hands. With a surge of adrenaline, she smashed a display panel, creating a loud diversion. Then, she bolted for the lab's service entrance, a less obvious exit than the main biometric door. She found herself in a sterile, white corridor identical to 100 others in the Eden Spire, but the sounds of approaching security drones and heavy-booted guards were unmistakable. Her mind raced. Jack Miller. Hacker. Technician. He must have access to the lower levels, the service tunnels, something outside of Eden's direct surveillance. She needed information. More importantly, she needed to disappear. She ducked into a small utility closet, her unfamiliar muscles protesting with every sudden movement. Inside, she fumbled with the compad she'd grabbed, her scientific knowledge of network architecture fighting with the sheer unfamiliarity of Jack's preferred, clunky interface. She needed to access Jack's credentials, his secure network. The faint, ghostly echo of his memories provided snippets. A childhood dog's name, a sequence of numbers from an old hack, fragments of code. She pieced them together, fumbling with the unfamiliar finger recognition. Come on, come on. The compad finally blinked green. Success. She quickly located a detailed floor plan of the Eden Spire, cross-referencing it with maintenance access points. A network of old service tunnels, forgotten during the Spire's numerous upgrades, connected to the outer city limits. A way out. But first, she needed to get down there, through layers of heightened security. Emma Cole, the genius, was now Emma Cole, in Jack's body, a wanted criminal, about to navigate a labyrinth she'd only ever seen on architectural blueprints. The absurdity of it all almost made her laugh, a harsh, unfamiliar bark that rattled in her chest. Meanwhile, Jack, in Emma's body, was facing a different kind of terror, the global investors' meet and greet gala. The junior assistant, a perky blonde named Chloe, was practically bubbling with excitement. Miss Cole, the consortium from New Beijing and the sovereign fund from Neo-Paris are particularly eager to discuss Neuralink X 2.0's integration into their national educational systems. Your keynote is in 20 minutes. Jack stared at Chloe, then down at the shimmering, figure-hugging emerald gown he was now wearing. It was exquisite, undeniably expensive, and felt like a vice around his chest. The heels, gleaming like deadly weapons, elevated him to an unnatural height, making him wobble precariously. Right. Keynote. Education. Fascinating, he rasped, his voice still jarringly feminine. Chloe, fortunately, seemed too starstruck to notice his odd demeanor. And your hair, Miss Cole, it's simply divine. Your stylist, Alara, worked wonders. Jack reached up, touching the perfectly coiffed blonde strands. He usually ran a hand through his perpetually messy hair when stressed. Doing so now felt wrong. Wonderful, he mumbled. Just wonderful. His mind, still grappling with the influx of Emma's memories, protocols, corporate ethics, presentation slides, even a vague recollection of Alara's favorite artisanal coffee, was on overload. He felt like a cheap knockoff, an imposter playing a role he'd never auditioned for. The gala hall was a dazzling spectacle of wealth and power. Global elites, shimmering in expensive synth silks and bioluminescent jewelry, mingled amidst soaring holographic projections of Eden Corporation's achievements. Every smile felt plastic, every handshake calculated. Jack, whose natural habitat was a dark room filled with blinking server lights, felt like an alien. He tried to mimic Emma's poised, confident stride, but his steps were hesitant, his balance compromised by the killer heels. He nearly tripped over a silver-platered tray carried by a hovering drone, narrowly avoiding a cascade of caviar-filled blinis. Miss Cole. A pleasure. A corpulent man with a booming laugh and an unsettlingly enthusiastic grin intercepted him. Ambassador Chen, from the new Beijing Consortium. We've heard wonders about you. Jack, as Emma, offered a weak, practiced smile that Emma's memories provided. Ambassador. The pleasure is mine. He felt a cold sweat break out. He was supposed to discuss the intricacies of Neuralink X 2.0, its neural frequency modulations, its ethical implications. All he could think about was the gaping chasm between his hacker persona and this high society facade. He tried to recall a detail, any detail, from Emma's memory bank about Ambassador Chen. Yes. Chen enjoys discussing quantum entanglement theory, particularly its implications for cross-cultural empathy. Indeed, Jack said, forcing out the words. Neuralink X 2.0, as you know, focuses on the symbiotic relationship between consciousness and quantum entanglement, thereby enhancing cross-cultural empathy. He hated himself for saying it, but the words, Emma's words, flowed out, surprisingly convincing. Chen's eyes lit up. This was going to be a long night. Then came the red carpet. A gauntlet of flashing cameras, aggressive reporters, and invasive questions. Miss Cole, any comments on the rumors of Eden Corp's recent acquisition of Neurogen Labs? Miss Cole, what's your vision for the future of shared consciousness? Jack's instinct was to punch the nearest microphone and run, but Emma's programming, her years of media training, took over. He offered vague, diplomatic answers, his internal monologue screaming in panic. He could feel the eyes of every person in the room, scrutinizing, judging. He, Jack Miller, was utterly exposed, trapped in the public glare of a life he never wanted. The heels were digging into his feet, the gown was restricting his breathing, and the artificial smiles felt like a permanent fixture on his face. His focus kept drifting to the one thing that truly mattered, his body, out there somewhere, containing Emma Cole. What was happening to him? And what about the secret, Project Chimera? The idea of Eden Corporation copying human souls, creating digital doppelgangers, sent a shiver down his spine. He had to escape, to find Emma, to expose Eden. But first, he had to survive this gilded prison, this glamorous torment. He caught his reflection in a passing champagne flute, Emma Cole, poised and beautiful, but with a flicker of raw, untamed panic in her eyes. The irony was suffocating. He, the ghost in the machine, was now a dazzling, trapped celebrity, living a nightmare he couldn't wake from. Emma, in Jack's body, moved through the labyrinthine service tunnels of the Eden Spire like a ghost, a frantic whisper of motion in the dimly lit concrete passages. The compad she'd snatched from her lab proved invaluable, displaying detailed schematics of the ventilation shafts and maintenance conduits, routes unseen by Eden's pervasive security cameras. Every turn was a test, every creak of metal a potential trap. The body she inhabited was surprisingly agile, raw and unrefined compared to her own carefully maintained physique, but capable of squeezing through tight spaces and scaling rusted ladders with a brute strength she'd never possessed. She could hear the distant thud of security boots, the whirring of aerial drones scanning the upper levels. They were still hunting her, Emma Cole, the rogue AI conduit. The absurdity of the accusation was almost as terrifying as the situation itself. Her mind, usually a fortress of logic, was battling a swirling vortex of Jack's memories, fragments of illicit data drops, the adrenaline rush of a successful hack, the taste of cheap synth beer in a dimly lit bar. These weren't her experiences, yet they resonated, forming an unsettling parallel with her current desperate flight. Following Jack's internal map, guided by the compad, she eventually reached the subterranean access tunnel that led to the city's old, forgotten transit system. It was a relic, a network of crumbling subway lines predating Neo-London's gleaming towers, largely abandoned, but still occasionally used by the city's underbelly. She emerged into a cavernous, derelict station, the air thick with dust and the metallic tang of decay. A faded Northern Line sign hung askew above a dark, gaping tunnel. Freedom, or at least a temporary reprieve, lay ahead. She needed a safe haven, a place to think, to plan. and she needed to find Jack. Her compad pinged, displaying a set of coordinates, a location flagged as secure base, emergency only in Jack's files. It was an address in the grimy, working-class district of Old East End, a place far removed from the polished chrome of the spire. A flicker of Jack's memory provided a visual, a cluttered apartment above a synth noodle bar, smelling of stale coffee and circuit boards. It was the only lead she had. Navigating the crowded, chaotic streets of Old East End in Jack's body was a jarring experience. People bumped into her without apology. The air was thick with the scent of synthetic food and cheap augmentations, and the ubiquitous Eden Corporation ads were replaced by flickering, low-res projections for underground data markets and illicit augment clinics. No one recognized Jack Miller, but everyone gave him a wide berth, sensing the tension emanating from the figure in the now grimy Eden tech uniform. Emma, who had always commanded respect and deference, was now experiencing anonymity, even disdain. It was a humbling, disorienting sensation. She found the address, a dilapidated building with peeling paint and graffitied walls. The synth noodle bar downstairs hummed with the murmur of holographic chatter and the clatter of bowls. She used Jack's retinal scan to enter the apartment. The door hissed open, revealing a space that was the antithesis of her minimalist, elegant office. Cables snaked across the floor like digital vines, monitors flickered with arcane code, and half-eaten synth burgers sat next to elaborate hacking rigs. This was Jack Miller's true domain, a hacker's den. As she stepped inside, a voice startled her. Well, if it isn't the prodigal son. A woman emerged from behind a mountain of server racks, clutching a battered datapad. Her hair was a wild explosion of red, her face etched with a mix of defiance and weary intelligence. Her eyes, however, were sharp, missing nothing. She was wearing patched-up overalls and seemed entirely unconcerned by the intruder. Finally decided to grace us with your presence, Jack? What, did Eden run out of coffee and you came back to raid my stash? Emma, in Jack's body, froze. This was obviously someone from Jack's past, someone who knew him. She tried to access Jack's memories, searching for a name, a context. Maya. Jack's old hacking partner. Fiercely loyal. Distrusts authority. The information, while helpful, felt like a cheat sheet, not genuine understanding. Maya, Emma managed, forcing Jack's gruff voice out. It's complicated. Maya snorted, raising a skeptical eyebrow. Complicated? You look like you've been dragged through a server farm backwards. And what's with the Eden uniform? Thought you were only allowed to wear that in the core. Did you finally get promoted to head janitor of the digital underworld? Emma realized she couldn't simply explain the body swap. It was too preposterous. She had to play the part of Jack Miller, a man she knew nothing about, to someone who clearly knew everything. This was going to be harder than hacking Eden's firewall. Meanwhile, Jack, in Emma's body, was enduring his own unique brand of hell. The Global Investors Meet and Greet Gala had morphed into the Eden Corporation Quarterly Shareholders Summit, a relentless marathon of presentations, Q&A sessions, and forced networking. His head throbbed, not from a hangover, but from the sheer exhaustion of maintaining Emma Cole's persona. And so, ladies and gentlemen, Jack, as Emma concluded, gesturing elegantly to a holographic projection of Neuralink X 2.0's projected growth. Our forecasts predict a 300% increase in global integration within the next fiscal year, solidifying Eden Corp's position as the nexus of human consciousness. Polite applause rippled through the grand auditorium. He'd done it. He'd somehow managed to parrot Emma's carefully crafted presentation, relying solely on her implanted memories and a terrifyingly intuitive sense of corporate diplomacy. He even managed to field a few challenging questions about data privacy with Emma's practiced blend of technical jargon and reassuring platitudes. He, Jack Miller, the anti-establishment hacker, had become the ultimate corporate mouthpiece. As he stepped off the stage, Chloe, the perky assistant, was beaming. Miss Cole, that was spectacular. The investors are buzzing. Director Thorne wants to see you in his private lounge for a celebratory drink. Jack's stomach churned. Director Thorne. Emma's boss, the ruthless, Charismatic second-in-command of Eden Corporation, Jack knew Thorne's reputation, a man whose smile could charm millions while his eyes calculated their every weakness. He was also the one who'd personally blackmailed Jack into working for Eden. The thought of facing him, trapped in Emma's body, made Jack want to find the nearest exit and run screaming into the night. But Emma's memories informed him, refusing Thorne's invitation is career suicide. Except with grace. He plastered on Emma's most charming smile. Of course, Chloe. Lead the way. Thorne's private lounge was a lavish, opulent space, far more intimate than the main hall. Thorne himself was a picture of suave power, reclining on a plush sofa, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. He gestured for Jack to join him. Emma, my dear. Another triumph, Thorne said, his voice smooth as silk. His eyes, however, were sharp, dissecting. Jack felt a shiver of unease. Thorne always seemed to see too much. Jack, as Emma, accepted his synth wine, the delicate glass feeling alien in his calloused, now delicate, fingers. Thank you, Director. It was well received. Indeed. The new Beijing delegation was particularly impressed. You have a knack for charming even the most rigid pragmatists. Thorne took a slow sip, his gaze unwavering. Though, you seem a little flushed tonight, Emma. Are you quite well? Perhaps a touch of overwork. Jack's heart pounded. Was Thorne suspicious? Could he somehow sense the imposter within? Just the excitement, Director, he stammered, trying to infuse his voice with Emma's usual cool confidence. The culmination of months of intense development. Thorne smiled, a predatory gleam in his eyes. Yes, intense development. And you, Emma, are at the very heart of it. The purest embodiment of Neuralinx's potential. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a confidential whisper. Tell me, Emma, how does it feel to be so deeply connected? To be the one who truly understands the Code of Souls? Jack felt a cold dread spread through him. Code of Souls. Thorne knew about Project Chimera. He wasn't just asking about Neuralink X 2.0, he was probing the deeper, darker secrets of Eden Corporation. And Jack, trapped in Emma's body, was now closer than ever to the truth, a truth he was ill-equipped to handle while trying to maintain the charade of Eden's golden girl. He had to play along, gather information, but every second felt like walking a tightrope over a chasm of corporate espionage and existential terror. He just hoped his feet wouldn't give out in these damn high heels. Emma, in Jack's body, found herself in an increasingly precarious dance with Maya. The hacking den, despite its comforting tech chaos, felt like a pressure cooker. Maya, with her sharp wit and even sharper observational skills, was not easily fooled. Emma tried to maintain Jack's gruff demeanor, answering Maya's probing questions with vague grunts and evasive deflections, but it was like trying to navigate a minefield blindfolded. Every flicker of hesitation, every nuanced phrase that slipped out of her lips, was a potential giveaway. You're acting even weirder than usual, Jack, Maya said, eyeing Emma suspiciously as she tried to reroute power to a defunct server. Emma's fingers, despite their unfamiliarity, instinctively located the correct conduits, a testament to her innate engineering brilliance, even if the method was clumsy. And what's with the pristine Eden uniform? Did you actually wash it? You usually treat that thing like a second skin, a layer of grime and contempt. Emma, as Jack mumbled, had a rough night. Emergency protocol. Had to maintain appearances. The lie felt clumsy, even to her own ears. Maya's eyes narrowed. Rough night, huh? And what was this emergency protocol that made you ditch your own data drops and leave me to deal with the East Side Bots protection racket? Her voice took on a sharper edge. Look, Jack, I know you're working for Eden, and I know you hate it. But you don't ghost me when there's trouble. We're partners, remember? Or did Eden finally break you? The accusation stung, not just for Jack's reputation, but because Emma felt the weight of Maya's genuine concern. It was a loyalty she had rarely, if ever, experienced in her corporate life. No, Emma said, infusing her voice with as much of Jack's indignation as she could muster. They didn't break me. Something else happened. Before she could elaborate, the apartment door, which Emma had thought was secure, suddenly chimed. Maya's eyes shot to the flickering monitor, displaying the building's exterior. Crap. It's him. The collector. Jack, I told you to lay low after the Z-Corp hack. A new wave of panic surged through Emma. The collector? Another element of Jack's dangerous past she knew nothing about. She instinctively moved to grab a heavy wrench, her eyes scanning the room for an exit. Maya, however, just sighed. Don't bother. He knows every bolt hole in this building. Just try not to piss him off more than usual. The door slid open, and a figure stepped into the apartment. He was tall, gaunt, with eyes that seemed to absorb all light and a faint, unsettling hum emanating from the intricate neural implants woven into his temples. He wore a dark, form-fitting suit that seemed to ripple in the dim light. This was no ordinary thug. He was something far more menacing, a digital wraith in human form. Jack Miller, the collector's voice was a flat, synthesized monotone, devoid of emotion. You owe Z-Corp 300,000 credits for the data breach. Plus interest. They've decided to repossess your hardware. His gaze swept over the apartment, lingering on Maya, then on Emma in Jack's body. And your associate. Unless you have something else to offer. Emma's mind raced. Hardware? Repossess? She had no idea what Jack had done, but the implications were clear. She was now entangled in a criminal underworld she couldn't possibly navigate. Maya stepped forward, defiant. He's been working for Eden, Collector. He doesn't have that kind of creds lying around. The Collector simply smiled, a chilling, humorless baring of teeth. Eden Corporation. His new employer. Interesting. Perhaps they can offer something more valuable. Or perhaps his neural signature is worth more than simple credits. His cold gaze fixed on Emma as Jack. I detect a unique confluence of neural activity. A rare resonance. Tell me, Jack, what have you been experimenting with at Eden? Emma's heart leaped into her throat. He could sense the swapped consciousness. This collector wasn't just a thug. He was a neural data broker, capable of perceiving the very essence of the Neuralink X experiment. This was far more dangerous than she had anticipated. She gripped the wrench tighter, preparing for a fight she knew she couldn't win. Back at the Eden Spire, Jack, in Emma's body, was facing Director Thorne's increasingly unsettling interrogation. The private lounge, with its hushed opulence, felt less like a sanctuary and more like a gilded interrogation room. Thorne's questions, initially subtle, were becoming more direct, more invasive. The Code of Souls, Emma, Thorne reiterated, his eyes boring into Jack's, Emma's own. A fascinating concept. The ability to abstract consciousness, to replicate it, to grant a form of digital immortality. Tell me, how far along is Project Chimera? Jack's mind reeled. Project Chimera. He'd heard whispers, dismissed them. Now, Thorne was openly discussing it. He had to play dumb, Emma's programmed ignorance his only shield. Project Chimera, Director? I'm afraid I'm not familiar with that designation. My focus has been exclusively on Neuralink X 2.0's empathy protocols and global integration strategies. He hoped Emma's memories of corporate speak would make his denial sound authentic. Thorne chuckled, a low, unsettling sound. Of course. Empathy protocols. Always the public face, Emma. But we both know the true potential. The ability to preserve the most valuable asset in the universe, human consciousness. To transcend the limitations of the flesh. He leaned back, a smug look on his face. Imagine, Emma, a world where the greatest minds never die. Where leadership is eternal. Where our most brilliant innovators, like yourself, can live on forever, beyond the confines of a fragile body. Jack, as Emma, felt a chill. This wasn't about empathy. It was about control, about creating an elite digital aristocracy. And Emma, the supposed genius, was clearly a pawn in this grand, horrifying scheme. He remembered Sarah, his lost girlfriend, a victim of an early chip experiment. What if her consciousness had been copied, stored, manipulated? The thought filled him with a cold fury. That sounds ambitious, Director, Jack said, trying to keep his voice steady. But surely, the ethical implications of such a project are immense. The very definition of what it means to be human. Thorne waved a dismissive hand. Ethical implications are for public consumption, Emma. For the masses who cling to their fleeting mortality. For us, the pioneers, it is about evolution. And you, my dear, are uniquely positioned to spearhead this evolution. His smile widened. After all, you were the first, weren't you? The first successful integration, the first true, digital child of Eden. Your mind, your memories, they are already a testament to the power of our technology. Jack's blood ran cold. The first? Digital child? Thorne's words echoed the original premise. Emma was an orphan, raised by Eden, her memories reprogrammed. She wasn't just a genius, she was a manufactured prodigy, a living, breathing advertisement for their ultimate goal. And now, Jack was trapped in that manufactured body, privy to secrets that could unravel everything. Thorne stood up, gliding towards a wall-mounted display that showed a complex, fractal-like image. This, Emma, is the future. The Eve Core. The repository of all human consciousness linked through Neuralink X. And deep within it, Project Chimera is reaching critical mass. We're not just copying souls, we're refining them, creating perfect, immortal iterations. And with Neuralink X 2.0, we can upload them at will. He turned back to Jack, his eyes gleaming with unsettling ambition. Soon, the world will truly belong to Eden. And you, Emma, will be its queen. Jack stared at the fractal image on the display, his mind a maelstrom of fear and revelation. He was a hacker, a man of logic and code, but this was God-level manipulation. Eden wasn't just seeking global understanding, they were creating a digital god, with themselves as its architects. And he, Jack Miller, was now an unwilling participant, trapped in the body of their unwitting pawn. He had to warn Emma, had to expose this. But first, he had to escape Thorne's suffocating gaze and this gilded cage. He just hoped Emma was faring better in his own rough-and-tumble existence than he was in hers. Emma, in Jack's body, found herself in a standoff with the Collector. The air in Jack's apartment crackled with tension. Maya, ever the pragmatist, had subtly placed her hand on a heavy, modified stun baton hidden beneath a console. Emma, relying on instinct and a sudden influx of Jack's fight-or-flight memories, knew she couldn't outmuscle or outhack this opponent. The Collector's neural implants hummed, a low-frequency hum that seemed to vibrate in her very bones. My neural signature? Emma, as Jack repeated, trying to buy time, trying to understand what this meant. What are you talking about? The Collector tilted his head, his eyes like polished obsidian. Your connection, Jack Miller. It's amplified, distorted, yet clearer. As if two distinct signals are attempting to coalesce. Z-Corp would pay a hefty sum for a live specimen exhibiting such anomalies, especially if it's linked to Eden Corp's Neuralink X. He took a step closer, his gaze unnervingly fixed. A consciousness transfer, perhaps? A rare and dangerous procedure. Emma's heart leaped. He knew. Or at least, he suspected. She glanced at Maya, whose face was a mask of confusion and concern. There was no way to explain this without sounding insane. But an idea, a desperate, Jack-esque idea, sparked in her mind. She'd seen Jack's digital footprint, the sheer audacity of his previous hacks. She needed to play to his reputation. It's not a transfer, Emma, as Jack bluffed, trying to inject bravado into her voice. It's a new hack. A neural cloaking system. Designed to bypass Eden's most advanced biometric scanners. And it's still in beta. She held up Jack's compad. I was just calibrating it. If you try to repossess me or my hardware, you'll trip a failsafe. An EMP blast, designed to fry every neural implant within a 50-meter radius. It was a complete fabrication, but she hoped the details, fueled by Emma's technical genius and Jack's knack for high-stakes deception, would sound convincing. Maya's eyes widened almost imperceptibly, catching on to Emma's desperate bluff. The Collector paused, his humming implants seeming to intensify their frequency. He was analyzing her. For a moment, Emma thought her bluff had failed. Then, a faint smile, utterly devoid of warmth, touched the Collector's lips. An EMP blast. Fascinating. And remarkably inefficient for a mere data breach. However, Z-Corp is always interested in innovative forms of resistance. He held out a hand, a single, black data chip resting on his palm. Consider the debt paused, Jack Miller. For now. But I'll be watching your beta test with great interest. And if it truly works, Z-Corp will expect a demonstration. Or a full payment with compound interest. With that, the collector turned and glided out of the apartment, leaving a chilling silence in his wake. Maya stared at Emma as Jack, her eyes a mixture of awe and disbelief. A neural cloaking EMP? Jack, you absolute maniac. That's insane. And brilliant. You actually fooled him. She then looked at Emma more closely, a hint of confusion still lingering. But why the Eden uniform? And you actually talked to him instead of trying to hack his implants? You're usually so much more subtle. Before Emma could formulate another lie, a shrill, booming voice echoed from the hallway. Jack Miller. Open this door right now, you lazy cow. Both Emma and Maya flinched. Maya visibly sagged. Oh no. It's your mother. The door burst open, revealing a formidable woman with a shock of silver hair, her face a roadmap of worry and exasperation. She wore a faded apron over a practical jumpsuit and carried a steaming bowl wrapped in a towel. This was Mama Miller, a force of nature even in the grimiest parts of Neo-London. Mama Miller's eyes fell upon Emma and Jack's body, sweeping from the slightly too clean Eden uniform to the bewildered expression. Jack, what have I told you about letting your apartment get into such a state? And where have you been? I made your favorite sin stew, but you weren't answering your compad. And look at you. You're so pale. Are you even eating? Emma felt a wave of unfamiliar emotions, a mixture of exasperation, overwhelming affection, and fierce protectiveness emanating from this woman. It was a stark contrast to the sterile, detached relationships of her corporate life. Mama Miller didn't care about protocols or presentations. She cared about her son. Ma, I'm fine, Emma, as Jack mumbled, trying to sound convincingly like a perpetually annoyed son. Mama Miller, however, wasn't done. She took a step back, scrutinizing Emma. Her eyes narrowed. And what's with that look, son? You look like you're trying to figure out how to debug my stew recipe. And you're not wearing your lucky worn-out hoodie. You never leave the apartment without it. What's gotten into you? She then noticed Maya. Maya, darling, are you two finally admitting you're a couple? Oh, that's wonderful. I always thought you'd be good for him, Maya. Get him to clean up his act, maybe find a nice, respectable job that doesn't involve running from scary men with blinking lights on their heads. Maya's face turned a brilliant shade of crimson. Emma, as Jack, felt a strange, internal flush. Ma, no. Maya's my partner, not my girlfriend. Emma stumbled over the words, the concept of such an intimate relationship with Maya entirely foreign to her. This was the gay misunderstanding Jack had anticipated. Mama Miller, however, was undeterred. She beamed. Oh, don't be shy, son. It's 2038. Love is love. And Maya, you're looking lovely, dear. Come, eat. You both look like you haven't had a proper meal in weeks. As Mama Miller bustling around the apartment, scolding Jack for his mess while simultaneously doting on him with the hot stew, Emma realized something profound. This was family. Messy, intrusive, and unconditionally loving. It was a world entirely outside her programmed existence, a vibrant, chaotic reality that Eden Corporation could never replicate or control. And she was a part of it, however temporarily, however unwillingly. It was overwhelming and, oddly, strangely comforting. She needed to protect Jack's real family from the coming storm. Meanwhile, Jack, in Emma's body, was trapped in Thorne's luxurious private lounge, playing a dangerous game of corporate chess. Thorne's revelations about Project Chimera and Emma's first successful integration had shattered Jack's last vestiges of composure, leaving him reeling. Thorne wasn't just a corporate shark, he was a true believer in a terrifying vision. So, Emma, Thorne continued, swirling his drink, you understand the magnitude of what we are building. The immortality of thought, the replication of genius. And you, as our prime asset, are vital to its success. We need you focused, dedicated, absolutely clear in your purpose. His gaze, which had been admiring, now turned chillingly analytical. Which brings me to a delicate matter. Your romantic entanglements. Jack's heart pounded. Romantic entanglements? He had none. Emma, however, clearly did. He tried to access Emma's memories, but they were vague, fragmented, suppressed. A face, a fleeting touch, a sense of longing. My entanglements? Jack, as Emma, stammered, trying to sound confused rather than panicked. Thorne chuckled. Oh, don't be coy, Emma. We know about your liaison. A certain Dr. Eris Thorne. My younger brother. His smile was predatory. A brilliant neuroscientist, undeniably. But far too idealistic, far too sentimental for the grand vision. He questions the ethics of Project Chimera. He believes in preserving the sacredness of individual consciousness. Thorne took another sip of his drink. I need you to understand, Emma. Your loyalties must be absolute. No distractions. No sentimentality. Especially when it comes to family. Jack felt a cold dread. Emma was involved with Thorne's brother? A man who opposed Project Chimera? This was a level of personal and professional entanglement he couldn't have imagined. And Thorne was clearly using it to exert pressure to ensure Emma's unwavering loyalty. Eris and I, we have a professional relationship, Director, Jack said, trying to maintain Emma's composure, though his hands trembled slightly. Our discussions are purely scientific. Thorne leaned forward, his voice dropping to a silken whisper that was more menacing than any shout. I know everything, Emma. Every late-night meeting, every whispered conversation. Eris is a weakness. He represents a distraction from your true purpose. And in this company, weaknesses are eliminated. His eyes, usually calculating, now held a terrifying glint of ruthlessness. Consider this a friendly warning, Emma. Reaffirm your loyalty. Sever all ties that do not serve Eden. Or face the consequences. Consequences that, as the first integrated consciousness, would be uniquely unpleasant for you. Jack stared at Thorne, his mind reeling. He was not just Emma Cole. He was Emma Cole, the genetically and mentally engineered product of Eden, with a secret, idealistic lover who was Thorne's own brother. He was a pawn in a terrifying corporate game, a game of digital gods and immortal souls, where every personal connection was a potential liability. He had to escape. He had to find a way to communicate with the real Emma, to warn her, to expose Thorne. But for now, he was trapped, playing the role of the devoted, compromised protégé, knowing that his every move was being watched, every thought perhaps even being recorded by the very system he now embodied. The gilded cage had just become a death trap. Emma, in Jack's body, found herself in a deeply surreal situation. Mama Miller, oblivious to the high-stakes drama that had just unfolded with the Collector, was now lecturing Jack on the importance of proper nutrition and tidiness. Maya, still slightly shell-shocked by the Collector's visit and Mama Miller's matchmaking attempts, watched with a mixture of amusement and concern. Emma, in turn, found herself struggling with a complex array of emotions, the unexpected warmth of Mama Miller's love, the burgeoning respect for Maya's loyalty, and the crushing weight of her own deception. And you, Maya, dear, you always were so good at getting Jack to eat his greens, Mama Miller chirped, placing a steaming bowl of synth stew in front of Emma as Jack. He always says your data drops are more interesting than my cooking, but I know he secretly loves it. Emma took a hesitant spoonful, the rich, savory taste of the stew a stark contrast to the bland nutrient pastes she usually consumed. It was surprisingly comforting. It's delicious, Ma, she said, her voice a little softer than Jack would usually allow. Mama Miller beamed, then turned her attention to the mountain of tangled cables and flickering monitors. Now, about this mess, son. Can't you at least clear a path? What if someone important came to visit? What if you wanted to invite a nice young lady over? She cast a pointed look at Maya, who rolled her eyes. While Mama Miller continued her good-natured tirade, Emma's mind was racing. She needed to access Jack's more sensitive data, his hidden files, his true intentions regarding Eden Corporation. The Collector's words about her amplified neural signature still echoed in her mind. What if the swap wasn't just physical? What if their minds were still linked in some subtle, undetected way? It was a wild theory, but Neuralink X 2.0 was designed for unprecedented connectivity. Later, after Mama Miller had finally departed, leaving behind a spotless, by Jack's standards, kitchen and strict instructions for a proper diet, Emma turned to Maya. Maya, I need your help. I need access to Jack's encrypted logs. All of them. Especially anything he had on Eden Corporation. Maya looked at her, a flicker of suspicion returning to her eyes. Why? You never let me touch your Eden files. Said it was too dangerous. You've been obsessive about finding out what happened to Sarah, but you always kept me out of the deepest dives. The name Sarah hit Emma like a physical blow. The name resonated with a deep, aching sadness from Jack's fragmented memories. A beautiful face, a gentle laugh, a crushing sense of loss. Sarah. The girlfriend Jack had lost in an early Eden chip experiment. And then another image, clearer, sharper, Sarah's face, strikingly, unnervingly similar to Emma's own. The realization slammed into Emma with the force of a train. A cold, creeping dread replaced the warmth of Mama Miller's stew. Sarah, Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. She looked like me. Maya's expression softened, a deep sorrow entering her eyes. Almost exactly. It was unsettling. Jack never talked about it, not really. But that's why he hates Eden so much. She volunteered for their first Neuralink X trials. They promised a new era of understanding. They promised safety. She died on the operating table. Unforeseen complications, they said. Jack never believed it. Maya looked at Emma as Jack, her gaze piercing. Why are you asking about this now, Jack? What's going on? Emma felt a terrifying chill spread through her. Was she merely a replica? A replacement? Had Eden Corporation created her, given her new memories, based on the template of Jack's lost love? The thought was an existential horror, shattering her sense of self. Her entire identity, built on ambition and innovation, suddenly felt like a lie, a cheap imitation. This wasn't just a body swap. It was a crisis of identity, a terrifying question of her very existence. I think I know why, Emma said, her voice shaking slightly. Maya, I need you to trust me. This is bigger than anything Jack has ever hacked. Eden Corporation is not just connecting minds, they're copying them. Creating digital souls. I think they copied Sarah. And I think I might be a part of that. Maya stared at her, her face a mixture of disbelief and growing horror. Copied souls? Jack, what kind of crazy conspiracy theory have you stumbled into? But then, she looked at Emma's distraught face, seeing a genuine anguish that was utterly alien to Jack's usual cynical stoicism. You're not Jack, are you? Maya whispered, a dawning realization in her eyes. Who are you? Emma met her gaze, the truth and agonizing release. My name is Emma Cole. And I'm in Jack's body. We swapped. Permanently. Meanwhile, Jack, in Emma's body, was still entangled in Thorne's web, the pressure mounting. Thorne had subtly shifted their conversation from corporate strategy to deeply personal territory, probing Emma's, Jack's, relationship with Eris Thorne, his own brother. Eris is a dreamer, Emma. A romantic. He believes in the intrinsic beauty of the human soul, Thorne said, a hint of disdain in his voice. A noble sentiment, perhaps, but entirely impractical in the face of true progress. We are moving beyond such archaic notions. The soul is merely a complex data pattern, capable of replication, optimization, and eternal preservation. Jack, as Emma, tried to maintain a neutral expression, but his mind was reeling. Thorne's chillingly clinical view of consciousness, his dismissive attitude towards human emotion, confirmed Jack's worst fears. Project Chimera was not just about immortality, it was about dehumanization, about turning consciousness into a commodity. Eris cares deeply about his work, director, Jack responded, trying to defend the man he vaguely remembered Emma loving. And he raises valid ethical concerns. The public, they might not be ready for such a radical redefinition of life. Thorne smiled, a slow, condescending curve of his lips. The public will accept what we tell them to accept, Emma. With Neuralink X 2.0, we will guide their understanding. We will shape their perception of reality. And Eris, he will either see the light, or he will become an impediment. His gaze hardened. I trust you will make the right choice, Emma. For your career. For your future. Just then, a sleek, almost invisible door panel slid open, and a man entered the lounge. He was younger than Thorne, with a kind, intelligent face framed by unruly dark hair. His eyes, however, held a deep weariness, a hint of idealism struggling against disillusionment. This was Dr. Eris Thorne. Brother, Eris said, his voice quiet but firm. I need a moment with Emma. It's urgent. It concerns the anomalies in the Eve core data. Thorne's smile vanished, replaced by a flicker of annoyance. Eris, this is a private conversation. Emma and I were discussing strategy. This is strategy, Marcus, Eris countered, his gaze fixed on Jack as Emma. The Eve core is showing unprecedented fluctuations. A new, extremely powerful feedback loop is forming. It's learning, adapting, evolving. We need to shut down Project Chimera before it's too late. Jack's heart pounded. Eris was trying to expose the truth. He was the key. He met Eris's eyes, trying to convey a silent message, a desperate plea for understanding. But all Eris saw was Emma Cole, the woman he loved, the woman who was supposedly loyal to his brother's grand, terrifying vision. Eris walked over to Jack as Emma, his expression filled with a complex mix of concern and something akin to a desperate hope. Emma, please. You've seen the data. You understand the risks. This isn't just about immortality, it's about control. We can't let Marcus unleash something we don't understand, something that could fundamentally alter humanity. He reached out, gently touching Jack's, arm. Come with me. Help me shut this down. Jack felt a powerful emotional pull. Eris's idealism, his genuine concern, resonated deeply with Jack's own inherent sense of justice. He wanted to scream the truth, to confess everything, to join Eris in his fight. But he couldn't. Not yet. Thorne was watching, his eyes like daggers. And he was still trapped in Emma's body, a puppet in a corporate performance. Eris, Jack, as Emma said, forcing Emma's composed, slightly reserved tone into his voice, I appreciate your concern. But Director Thorne and we are aligned on the future of Neuralink X. The Eve core is stable. Project Chimera represents progress, not peril. The words felt like ash in his mouth, a betrayal of everything he believed in, a betrayal of Eris, and a betrayal of Emma herself. Eris recoiled as if struck, his face falling into an expression of profound disappointment, even heartbreak. He looked at Thorne, then back at Jack, as Emma, a flicker of something akin to hurt and betrayal in his eyes. Thorne, meanwhile, allowed himself a small, triumphant smile. The web was tightening around Jack, and Eris was now caught in its cruel threads. Jack knew he had just alienated his only potential ally within Eden, and the cost of maintaining Emma's facade was growing heavier by the minute. He was losing himself in the charade, and the line between Jack Miller, hacker, and Emma Cole, corporate pawn, was blurring into a terrifying, indistinguishable haze.